Hey there, Professor Snart checking in as we continue on our creative writing journey here. We move now into Unit 5, which is our first workshop unit. In other words, our first opportunity to write really more of a full piece and then exchange that within a group of people within the class and get feedback from all of those group members. So this is one of the most, I think, valuable parts of the course, but also one of, well, or there maybe because of that, it's maybe also the most important just to understand in terms of due dates and sort of technically how things need to go and all that sort of stuff. So you'll notice that for Unit 5 here and for all the other workshop units, we have two due dates, separate due dates, unlike for other units where we just have the one. And you can see what they are here. I'm clicked into the due dates. And so there's one earlier date by which you have to post your work. So basically, we're in the fiction workshop, so you're writing a short story. There's really no requirements about subject matter or style necessarily, except you do want to reflect kind of what we've been learning as the course is going as far as being concise and precise with language and, you know, not having a lot of filler or extra stuff in there, making it interesting, dealing with kind of rising action and some tension or some, you know, shape to your plot and all that sort of stuff. So we have been learning that kind of stuff, even though we haven't necessarily applied it in any really specific kind of way. This is the first opportunity to do that. So then you have your Word file or whatever your word processor is. So you've worked on your short story, you've saved it, it's done. Be sure to save it or export it if you're using Mac as an RTF file. That makes it easy for everybody to open regardless of what kind of computer they're using or word processor or whatever. So that's one of the most important parts. It's simple, but you know, if you can't open the file, then you're not going to get feedback from people if they can't get access to it. So anyway, the first due date then is when you're posting your work. The next due date is, as it says here, the point by which you've provided feedback to all of the group members who've posted on time by commenting directly within the file and then sending that file back. And it's all through discussion board, so you don't have to email people individually or anything like that. So a couple of things that you want to do. Obviously, you can look at Unit 5 itself that reviews a lot of stuff, and you'll find information posted and repeated in various places. So the first thing to do is review how the workshops work, which is a separate link over here that I'll click into. And there's a lot of text here, but a lot of it boils down to the golden rule. Treat other people within the workshop group as you yourself want to be treated. In other words, most writers want valuable, useful feedback, so be sure that you're giving that as well. You can't go in expecting people to pore over your work and give you all of this massive commentary, but then not really return that favor to their work as well. So really read through this carefully. It reviews the whole due date situation, reminders about you have to post on time, obviously, in a certain format as far as the file, just so it's accessible, obviously in the right place. So no credit is given for late stuff or basically stuff that's inaccessible to the rest of your group. So one of the things that you'll notice in terms of the workshop grading is that very little of the grade reflects sort of how good the story is. The fact is, a lot of people are at different kind of stages in their writing career. Some are really new at it, some have been doing it a long time, some work in different genres, so you might have been a writer for a long time, but you don't write short stories that often. So I really don't want to grade people based on, the so-called quality of the work. A lot of that is subjective, although not really as subjective as a lot of people think, but most of your grade is derived from posting your own work on time and in the right place so everyone else can get at it. And then really the bulk of the grade is your work as a reviewer or workshop participant or commentator on other people's work. And so really important is that you return a file to the person. So basically, if I'm the writer, I write my short story, I save it as an RTF file, I post it to the discussion board for my group. The group gets it and they comment within that file, and you'll see a version of what that could look like within how the workshops work here. And then they post it back to the discussion board so that I can get it as the writer and see all the stuff that they've marked. Both areas that they thought were strengths in the story, but also obviously areas that could use improvement. Maybe they were confused or thought something else should happen. Maybe they just caught stuff like typos, which is useful as well. So again, be really kind of conscious of how you're posting your own work, but also how you're required to provide feedback here. You can see the grading guidelines, right? It's mostly about posting on time, returning the file to people. There's very little of it, if any, honestly, that is like, how good is your story? That's just too amorphous for us to try to deal with. The other thing to keep in mind is that the bulk of your feedback then really comes from your workshop group participants. So it's not like you can just kind of do that halfway and hope to get all your feedback from me. Just given the dynamics of the course, it works much better to get feedback from your peers within your group. So speaking of which, let's go to Unit 5, back into Unit 5, and you can see that I've set up workshop groups. You can find your name listed in the group. Again, everything occurs through the discussion board, so I would click into the discussion board. Again, find your name in the list of groups here, click into that, and then you can just use this discussion board to post your work and then provide responses or replies to everybody in your group who's posted it on time and in a file format that's accessible. That's about it. So the technical part is hopefully relatively simple, but is obviously really crucial for everyone to do correctly. Otherwise, the workshop kind of falls apart, and you really don't get a lot of, if any, useful feedback or credit for the assignment. Keep in mind that there's workshops throughout our course that deal with different genres. So there's the fiction, there's poetry, there's nonfiction, creative nonfiction. So again, it's important to get the hang of it here, because the format will be repeated a number of different times in the course. Okay, that's about it. If you have any questions, obviously be in touch with me. Again, there's not a lot of requirements in terms of like what topic matter you have to cover, or the sort of general style or tone of your piece that you're writing. I leave that pretty much up to you. The only thing I do hope, or I do look for, is the application of the rules of creative writing that we've talked about, some of the basic kind of conceptual stuff, use of language, moving the reader through the story and that kind of thing. Other than that, there's not a lot of rules to follow, to be honest, in terms of, you have to have 3 characters or whatever. There's really none of that stuff. So if you do have questions, or you're just not sure if you're headed in the right direction, be in touch with me. But again, be aware of those due dates and really obviously start writing now, so you have the opportunity to develop, to revise, and so that you're really putting forth something that you've spent some time on. That again is part of the golden rule of the workshop. You can't expect people to invest time in commenting on work that you've provided if you yourself have taken 30 minutes to write it, whether it's a lump of 30 all at once or you've just sort of picked away at it. You really do want to invest some time. Now, having said that, the other important thing to remember is that you're not posting work that you think is perfect or finished or that you really don't want to touch, because obviously that defeats the purpose. So a lot of people, I don't know if they just get nervous or they get writer's block or they just run out of time, but sometimes they'll post stuff that they wrote in high school or a year ago or whatever that they really don't want to work on anymore. So you're sort of tricking your workshop people into getting into what you've written and providing commentary, when in fact you're not really even open to looking at the comments that they've provided. So in some ways, while you don't want to present something to your group that you've just dashed off at the last minute, you also are not required to provide this sort of perfectly polished, refined, super edited, complete document necessarily, because that doesn't leave a lot of room for your workshop participants to provide feedback. In fact, one of the things that you can do when you post your file for workshop is if you want to provide something in the comments area that will direct your readers to, like, I need help with the title, or I'm not sure if the ending's very good, or what do you think of this one character, is it believable, all that kind of stuff. So you can certainly ask for particular kinds of feedback when you post your document. Okay, so be sure you spend some time reviewing what we've done here. Hopefully you're reading or watching these videos. I get the sense from the significant objects unit that some people didn't. They sort of did the assignment, but not really. So be sure that you're, attending to these videos, as goofy as they are sometimes. They're an integral part of the class, so there's, information here that you want to be aware of. Certainly review the due dates then, the how the workshops work. You might want to review the rules of creative writing, just so they're fresh in your mind as you sit down to work on your story. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, just be in touch with me. I'll talk with everyone soon.